Doing it's another episode of the Rugby League Lounge weekly show, and I'm here today to do basically the state of the six survivors. So obviously the six teams left in the NRL finals, and what a great finals week one it was. Obviously started off with a blowout and then some really, really close games. Probably the one that was a blowout a lot of people were predicting to be the closest one of the weekend, but it certainly was not that. A very interesting round of footy and a very, very exciting couple of weeks to come to finish out the season. Now, obviously, just a little heads up, I haven't been doing too much content finals wise. I thought this would be the best way to do it. I have had a little project in the works for a while, and finally I've been able to get it underway, and it is the NRL season awards, which I've been doing with a bunch of other members from the NRL Insta community. So I am stoked to get that up away. I've got a very busy time in my life too, so it's just good to be able to have that content kind of there. I can kind of, obviously get it away and going and still produce some content. So I do apologize in advance about not getting as much content on the Insta, but I hope you guys understand. I've still got those awards. We've got one coming daily for the next couple of weeks. I think we've got 14 in total, 12 voters. Very exciting stuff. So I hope you guys appreciate it. I'm pretty tired at the moment, but I thought it'd be best still to get this content out there. Obviously, because it is finals footy, and I feel like I'd be letting you guys down if I wasn't getting something out. So if I sound a little bit downer, I'm okay. I'm doing all right. And it's finals footy. As soon as Friday comes around, I'll be in much better spirits. So I'm just going to talk about the state of each team. Basically, kind of a little bit of a view from last week and where they sit. And it's interesting, actually, and there's a couple of teams in particular where we look at them from a week ago and what they look like now. And, I'd be saying almost completely different things to what I'm going to be saying today. So let's start off with the Seagulls. And basically, this is one that we always knew, but we saw it into existence the other night. And what's plan B? What is plan B when Tommy is stopped? Now, the thing with me is, look, I think we all saw this coming. If Tommy was going to be minimised, it was going to be against the Storm, and it was going to be one of those things where it's like, oh, well, that's the recipe to get beat Manly, just shut down Turbo. Easy said and done, though. Other teams, I'm sure, have tried, but Storm are the only ones that have been able to pull off, and it worked. It worked big time. They slowed them down. They were able to just stop Manly's momentum, and they had a game plan. And that's the thing about finals footy. Obviously they versed Manly before, and they didn't want to show all their cards. And also you got to verse a team every different week. When it's finals, that's it. That is, you put all your cards into the basket, Like you can spend that whole week training for that team. In the season, yes, you'll do little things in the team sheet. I'm sure that you'll load up on the star players, but you can't really pinpoint a game plan design for just that team, and they're able to do that. So, and they're not going to be the only team that's going to try to slow Tommy down. So basically, for me, is when they shut Tommy down, you can still get him back in the game. You can do all you want. Tommy's still going to find his way back in the game. They were just unable to do it that night because the Storm was so clinical. And at the end of the day, some of the Manly Seagulls were off. Daly True Evans had a poor match for his standard. I think he's had a great 2021, but he was disappointing. And at the end of the day, those fringe players that are so great when Turbo's rolling, they've got to do some big plays sometimes when Turbo has got all the attention, when they are probably given a little bit of space. They are probably given the chance to take over. The Storm allowed these guys to have opportunities to take ownership of the game. And ultimately, it was the best decision on the Storm because they're unable to do that. It's best to load up on Tommy and leave the other players to make the decisions. And look, I think the Manly, honestly, they have the talent to do so, especially when Tommy's not there. The head of the snake is still Cherry Evans. Look, if they can still, Cherry Evans is still, look, we'll talk about some great kicking games later on, but his kicking game is still tremendous. He did a long kick in this game that was like not many other people would have found the grass. I think there's been so many years he's led the comp in 2020, in 40-20s, I should say. But the other night, this wasn't working. So at the end of the day, you can still get Tommy in the game. I think even though the game plan was there to stop Tommy, you just need to get that momentum back. We talk about it now that you can't get the momentum back. I disagree, and I think kicking is the best way to get it back. I remember the Rabbitohs Panthers game. Honestly, the way we've been talking about, like I mentioned, you think Penrith had no chance of getting back in that game, especially with the players they were missing. I can't remember particularly, but they were missing their Brian Toto, missing James Harris. But how they get back in the game, it was Nathan Cleary. And Daly Tree Evans, obviously, I don't think he's quite at the level in terms of Nathan Cleary as a kicker or just as a general playmaker and his influence on the game in general. But you can change momentum when things aren't going, and that's all they need to give Tommy the sniff. And obviously, it's not just about Tommy, but they need to be able to set the platform. Then Tommy will work off, and then Tommy will be a man. So he will be the main man to do the damage. So it's just that, how are we going to get Tommy in the game when, there has been the game plan designed to him? And I believe basically the fringe players of the Manly, the core of Manly, everyone else just needs to grit their teeth, think about, okay, let the defense, let Tommy absolutely swamp him, but then put respect on our name. Let's make them pay for that. Do that. And then they'll realise, we've got to mark these other guys. We've got to shut these guys down. And then Tommy is able to grind it out, make big plays to swing that momentum back on your side to get Tommy back in the game. Now, the Roosters, winning is a habit. Despite all the injuries, they know how to win. Despite how lacklustre they were on the weekend, even though they've had a lot of troops down, and they were still meant to beat the Titans. And yes, it was a close one. And yes, they probably should have lost, but they still won. And look, let's talk about Sam Walker. Let's talk about Sam Walker. Let's talk about Trent Robinson. Look, let's not underestimate it. Even though I probably would have liked to see him play more minutes, but I don't know how many other coaches would have been tempted to start him on the weekend. But at the end of the day, he was the guy at 9 minutes left, the freshest legs on the field. I don't know if he kicks that field goal if he's not on. And look, at the end of the day, he is still learning how to play the game management side. He's still learning on. Yes, Hutchison's there, but at the end of the day, he probably is best utilised in this role. Still going to say that I think maybe there is, and you might see this weekend, he can probably utilise a bit more, but it was genius in the way, and yes, he missed a tackle on Firma, and then he made up for it. Great defensive plays. If he didn't have fresh legs, he did. A gunslinger is what Brett Finch is referring to him, and that's what he is. He is just winning games. It's the second time the Titans have been victim of his brilliance. And and just to touch on the Roosters, winning is a habit. Coach is a winner. The organisation's one of their big players are winners. They're all winners. And look, they come up against the Seagulls this weekend, and that is ultimately what they probably have over the Seagulls. Not the talent, but the winning. And we talk about game plan. They'll have stuff up their sleeves. It'll just be whether they have the talent to execute it. And honestly, when it comes to these big games, even though each time we're just expecting them to fall off, they haven't. It could be this weekend because their talent to execute it against, the X Factor in Turbo, and also the other talent that Manly bring, not to mention Des Hasler as well as a great coach as well, and the best coach of this modern era. But look, we keep riding them off. I think they honestly have a really good shot of causing an upset. And I think what's going to happen is going to be up to Drew Hutchison to have a really good game to put them in a position to do so, because I do think you're going to have big games from the guys that have been there before, the guys that have won premierships. It is a shame they don't have Joe Manatu, but I think for me, I think Drew Hutchison's got to have a big game, and honestly, I think he will have a big game, but will it be enough? At the end of the day, though, like we said, winning is a habit, and the Roosters certainly do that. Despite all the troops they got out, they've been able to grind out wins throughout the season. And even though, yes, they've had plenty of talents over the years, they still won. They've still got to put the results up. There's a lot of great teams on paper that haven't won. The Roosters are certainly not that. They are a great team on paper and when they hit the paddock as well. The Panthers, look, we talked about it at the top. It's funny how opinions can change. Honestly, as a Storm fan, I thought the Panthers were in the best position, and now their preseason concerns for me have come true. I put them to come fifth. I thought it'd be a drop off. I thought there'd be kind of a hangover from that 17 wins. And not just purely because it disappointed, but they lost Tamia, they lost Tidavano, they lost Mansour. Look, not the best players in their roster, but what are they? They were the oldest players, they were the leaders. They had guys that had played representative footy in Josh Mansour and James Tamou, and they missed it. And look, at the end of the day, I also want to bring up the Cleary thing just quietly. Wayne Bennett versus Cleary. Now, that's going to be a mismatch most days of the week. But it really, when you build up everything as a bulk, that was another thing that let them down. Those experiences to get over the top, how to win over the media, how to, deal with the drama that was happening. He definitely do his teams any favour. Now, we could be sitting in the week and say maybe it was a mastermind play because he could be deflecting all the pressure that could have easily been deflected onto Cleary, Luai, all the big players. All the talk's been about Cleary. It could be a genius move, but I don't think so. I think Wayne Bennett definitely got the better of him. And for me, look, they just lacked a bit of energy. Panthers, I thought that, like I said, they didn't deal with much adversity last year. And I thought when they were going to deal with adversity this year, which they did, they were going to not crumble, but they were just going to slip off. And even though they had some rough weeks here, they were still able to win games. They lost against the Sharks, who a lot of people but the only games they lost, Cleary wasn't there. That says a lot. So they were able to prove me wrong in the sense that they were still able to be able to grind out those wins despite the experience they lost. They were able to deal with adversity, and that's why I was feeling really confident on their chances to go all the way in straight sets to the GF. But they come up against a Rabbitohs side, and I just think is that concern real about the resiliency, about those signings they lost? And look, we could be sitting here next week and they're up against the Storm, first, second, and probably the two who wins that is going to win the grand final despite them losing the Rabbitohs. I still would pick Panthers to redeem themselves from that one. But yeah, it's just, it does. It's funny how footy changes. It is great and good and bad. But yeah, for me, look, a little bit of concern for Panthers, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a week off. They underestimated the Rabbitohs. And yeah, they're back and running into gear. The Eels, I honestly don't know what to make of the Eels. I don't know what to make of that win because you look at the 2-point win against Newcastle Nightside, who, arguably is one of the worst seventh team to, I think there was the worst fought against by a seventh place team to ever make the finals. But at the end of the day, and you look at their scoreline, they actually played pretty well in parts, and they played a style of footy where once they got in their groove, that's the style of footy they play. They need to play up the middle. They need to, RCG, Junior Paulo just need to play aggressive. And Mitchell Moses has been given the praise he's deserved, played one of its best games that he has played for the Eels. But they still only won by 2 points. Now, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people said Eels were the deserved winners, but they still got themselves in that position. Look, Ponga can do that to you, though. He can, when your team's not meant to be in it, he can just come up with magic and put it in. But yeah, like I said, they were dwindling huge, and it looked like deja vu. And we got some optimism with the Storm. The Panthers game was a weird situation. They rested a lot of players, and you think maybe, yes, understand that they probably you understand the decision not to play all your key players, but keep that momentum rolling. And look, I think they'll be glad that this week's over. They come up against the Panthers this week, but I'm really unsure. I'm unsure of Junior Paulo. I know he was under a bit of doubt with something he did during the game. but yeah, just like I think someone Matty John summed up best. Like when these two teams are at their best, obviously you're picking Panthers. But like the Eels, I was like the emergence they had to start the year with Papali'i and Cartwright to the Arsenal. They look great, but yeah, and then it's just been what to make of them. It could be really the same, or it could be the turning point. There's been brewing for a few years. Obviously, they had the wooden spoon year in 2018, but they did great in 2017. They almost beat the Storm in the first round of the finals. They were the only team that got close to the Storm that season. Lost in 2018, like we mentioned, 2019, 2020, obviously top 4, top 5 teams. But yeah, they bowed out. They, obviously the narrative, they they didn't show up when it mattered. And we're at that state now where I don't know if that is the possibility of happening again, or is this the year they do it? But they're coming up against a very credible Panther side who will be bouncing back from a doubtful performance, but did a very dour performance. So yeah, don't know what to make of the one from the Eels. Storm, as a Storm fan, look, it just is easy to forget. And I think as a fan myself, I think, that just shows you. I think at the end of the day, like let's talk about Pappy, it was not that I didn't doubt Pappy. It's just that, did he have enough time? Did he still carry over fears about getting injured again? Also, the pressure of his team flying red hot, breaking records or tying records, I should say. And without him, that would suck. I know you root for your team no matter what. But at the end of the day, you're human. You're going to feel a little bit weird about it all. Like they don't need me. Well, I'll tell you what, against the Sharks, he showed little glimpses. I was still a little bit hesitant because of the opposition they faced. But, man, against Manly here, he was sensational. He was great. And the combinations were just flying. Munster has actually been playing great footy last couple of weeks. He just had it. He was actually having down footy when they were playing good, down to his standard, I should say. But he was fantastic. And the 4-pack is just unbelievable. The bench is the big factor for me. Now, the bench is a little bit weirdly constructed because obviously if Nico Hines was on the bench, he'd be the best player in the final series, not to be blamed by a long shot. So you got to fit him in there. But man, you compare that bench to anyone in the comp, it is unbelievable. There's so much to add there. And if they can find the way to utilise Nico, that is just scary. I thought it was their biggest X factor last year, and I think it probably is their biggest X factor this year. And they didn't have Harry Grant this year. This year they do. They replaced the Cheese and they put in Harry Grant. It's just easy to forget how great, obviously, like we said about the Panthers, they were in good position, and Storm looked to be struggling. And a lot of it was, the doubt was not having a settled spine, very uncertain, like we've already mentioned. But it looks like they might have timed it great. Look, it's one of those things. I'm really excited, Storm fan, but I don't want to, expect us to just walk all our way to the premiership, because those doubts, it was pretty bleak there. Even though we were winning, that loss against the Eels, even though it was gutted when we lost, I think at the end of the day, we did need that loss. The cliche, we did need that loss, and I'm grateful. But yeah, the performance in the weekend was just showed just how great they can be, and it's just so funny how easy it's to forget. But it's just so funny how easy it is just for that switch to turn back on, and you go from being very concerned to back to being probably outright premiership favourites now with the Storm. And and we're still got to welcome back Edo Carr, hopefully too, if everything comes up good with his injury. So yeah, very pleased as a Storm fan, and it was a great performance the other night. One of the games I enjoyed the most of recent times, especially like this, the stage we're on, and the red hot form of who we've mentioned plenty of times today, Turbo. Because I think, like we said, at top 2, it was probably the one game people were flipping, that in the Eels and the Knights game. Everyone was picking maybe they're upset there, but yeah, far from it. And now the Rabbitohs. So unlike the Rabbitohs, this performance in the best possible way. I used to think when it comes to the best teams, look, they've got their talent's unreal. Arguably, well, the best attack in the comp when they're going, talent-wise. But their forward pack is, compared to the others, doesn't match up. Let's talk about also that's the double-edged sword. They've made 3 prelims, but at the end of the day, they've lost 3 prelims. So credit to them, but they haven't made it that far. They haven't got past it. But this is the first time out of the lot where they've had the week off and done it. They've always lost, or they've always, had to play 2 games of finals footy before making it. So they're fresh. So they're probably going to come into next week as favourites. But yeah, the big game players haven't stepped up in the past. I've always been pretty critical of Cook. Reynolds is a guy that, yes, he's a great halfback, but does he take the game on like he should in big moments? Now, at the end of the day, I expect Cook to. I expect probably Walker to, who's got more that, he's obviously got that flair in his game, that excitement, the ability to unsettle defenders, and he is kind of more the orchestrator of the choir, so to say, in Reynolds. So never expect him, but the 4-pack never matched up for me, and against the big guys when it mattered, and the big game players as well, and their style in general. Like we talked about, their stars. Look, it's not a gritty style; it's a flash style. When they're going hot. But when it comes an ugly game, a finals footy game, that doesn't go too well. But they were able to do it. And it's been slowly building that way since that one against the Warriors. I think someone mentioned they put 60 on them, but they conceded 22. Since then, they've only conceded 13 points. I think they've had the best defense in the comp. They've had the best defense in the comp since then. If that is correct, I'm pretty sure that is correct. So that's unbelievable. And they've been able to deal with adversity. You got to remember, they didn't have Latrell last year and still made it to prelims. They've done it again. I doubted Blake Taft there. He made a couple of errors, but man, he did not. Once he made those errors, the thing is, he made those errors early, and he still was confident in what he did and made some big plays down the stretch, set up a try, and also saved a try potentially with Stephen Crichton going through. So and so unlike the Rabbitohs in the best possible way is what I've put. And ultimately, it is like Wayne Bennett, just proving us wrong. He knows how to get these guys ready to go. And he's one of those guys, like when you see the Rabbitohs beat the Panthers, like, even though I think, oh God, that's crazy. It's like, we should have seen it coming. Because who's behind it? Wayne Bennett. Wayne Bennett is behind the driving wheel, the steering wheel there, I should say. Look, and let's probably just sum it up with, it's interesting. Like, obviously, we've got 2 teams straight through to the finals, straight through to the prelims, I should say. And even though the Eels and the Roosters will be the ones that will probably be the underdogs, if you're telling me that one of them gets through next week, I won't be awfully surprised. They're still talented teams. Like I say, winning is a habit. And Eels, they're on that cliff now. They're either going to keep climbing, they're going to be all right, or they're going to drop back straight where they were, like always expected. But there are signs. We saw early in the season, there are signs that they were on the improve. And against the Storm, which was only a couple of weeks ago, that was a very promising sign. And also just the little glimpses of that game, the Knights. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. That is the state of the 6 survivors, guys. I do apologise for kind of the, just being solo. Also, no Joel this week, which is unfortunate. I got a bit rushed with time, so I was unable to ask him. Went solo, but I hope you guys enjoyed. And please comment. Let me know your thoughts on the finals so far and the state of the 6 survivors so far. Hey, cheers, guys.